Now, the video that follows is featuring an international leader from Australia, Miss Leslie Loble. She's a recognized leader of public purpose reform in Australia and the US, with a substantial track record delivering major organizational and policy innovations in education and related economic domains. Currently, Leslie Loble is a Director of Government and Not-for-Profit Entities, Industry Professor at University Technology Sydney, and a Fellow of the Paul Ramsay Foundation, amongst other appointments. Now, she will share some thoughts on AI, education, and skills.
One of the great benefits of AI is that it operates both at a highly personal level and at a systemic level at the same time. And that is compelling when it comes to education, where we have not always done particularly well in marrying individual student needs in wide-scale, large-scale education systems. So AI offers a really compelling possible solution to tackle both the student needs and the teaching and systemic needs. This is the greatest challenge we face, isn't it? To bend the curve of AI's development towards greater social, economic, environmental, and other benefits. And when it comes to education, that applies as well, but we also know that we already face a significant digital divide, which is certainly within education and across nations. So the best resourced schools and the best resourced families, the best off families, can access some incredible technological opportunities that enhance learning, and that's not always available across the board, and certainly to disadvantaged students and communities. So when it comes to thinking about skills, we certainly need people who will design fantastic AI applications, and particularly in education for lifting outcomes, achievement, and tackling areas of complexity and disadvantage. But I would say there's a much broader set of skills that all students need to have to deal with the rapid technological changes that we experience today and certainly going into the future. Those skills are critical thinking, computational thinking, metacognition, essentially, what do I know, what do I need to know, and lastly, ethical reasoning. So in Australia, these concepts are being woven into a new national curriculum that's being developed. At the state level, you see much greater attention to what is the best evidence in education and how do we invest in professional development for teachers and educational leaders. And then in universities, of course, where there's much more specific attention to AI. There is no doubt that one of the lessons of COVID has been how essential technology is in our lives. It's impossible to imagine how we would have maintained, as well as we did, and quite substantially well in Australia, teaching and learning, certainly in schools, throughout this entire period. But I have to say, I think there's been an equally important, if not more important, lesson learned from COVID that often gets overlooked. And that is that there is a limit to how much technology we want to be using in our lives, and certainly in our education. Students, teachers, parents absolutely are desperate to get back into the classroom. They crave that in-person attention, not always mitigated by a screen, as you and I are here today. That personal engagement has really been the lesson of COVID, that technology must be kept in its proper place. It's a tool, not a replacement. And certainly in education, that is the case. So I can think of many areas that we would want to collaborate between Australia and the EU. The EU is leading globally in thinking about the policies, regulation, incentives, structures, systems, and so forth that will bend that curve of AI towards wider public benefit. And certainly, I think Australia could benefit tremendously from collaborating with the EU around that. Secondly, I think we would really need to understand much more what both private and public sector organizations need to do to develop their own workforces, not just in their technology departments, but across all their workforces, to understand AI and to know when it should be used and how best it could be used. And lastly, I think generally it would be great to collaborate on those areas where AI and technology could help solve some of our toughest public challenges, whether that's climate change, lifting educational disadvantage, addressing disability, health, and well-being.